Hero Talk, the official podcast, episode number 1. This is brought to you by me, Jacob Bartley, and I will also be your host today. And for this very first edition of the Comic Hero Talk podcast, it's just going to be me today. I'll occasionally have some buddies on, some guests on, but for the most part, it's just going to be me talking superheroes, talking comic books, because I love it. Now, just to give a little background on myself, I do have another YouTube channel called Apocalypse Movies, and you can find that on YouTube. Just type in Apocalypse with an X at the end, movies, and you can find me there. Also, I have two buddies that I podcast with on there named Jake Berlin and Giorgio Ramos, and you're occasionally going to see them on this Comic Hero Talk podcast and on other reviews that I do on Comic Hero Talk. But for this first episode, I kind of wanted to just let the viewers see me and tell them about myself and why I love superheroes and comic books, and just also get into the topics that I'm going to discuss today. But before I get into the format of this podcast and the topics, just let me give a little bit of background. Like I said earlier, my name is Jacob Bartley, and I am a huge superhero / comic book / movie fan, and it all stems back to my childhood. When I was a kid, my earliest memories are me playing with X-Men toys. That's probably the memory I can draw back furthest to, is me playing with X-Men toys, watching X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons, watching the Batman animated series, and watching Power Rangers. All of that leading into my older childhood, when I was maybe about 10, 11 years old, I think, is when the first live-action X-Men movie came out, and then a couple years later, the first live-action Spider-Man movie came out, and I just spent my whole entire childhood watching those movies over and over and over again, and I just naturally fell in love with everything superhero and everything comic booky. That being said, I never actually read comic books until recently. I want to get that point across really clearly. I am not a comic book expert. I'm going to be reviewing comics and talking about comics a lot on this YouTube channel, but I'm approaching it as a new reader, and I kind of wanted to relate to other people who are also new readers and give my opinion on it. Just because I don't know my history. I know my history from doing research, but I haven't read comic books up until recently. But just because I don't know my history and haven't read comic books recently doesn't mean I can't give my opinion on new comics. And I've been reviewing movies for a couple years now, so I know how to go about reviewing storytelling, and comic books are just storytelling in another way. So I'm still gonna be able to give my insight and my perspective, and I think it's still a valuable opinion even though I'm not a comic book expert. So with all that out of the way, just stuff about me, let me explain what this YouTube channel is going to mostly be. So I named it Comic Hero Talk, and I know the name might be generic or stupid, but there's so many different podcasts and YouTube channels and websites out there. All the cool names, all the good names regarding stuff that are comic book or superhero are already taken. So I tried to put up the best thing together, and I looked it up, I researched it. There's nothing out there titled Comic Hero Talk, so I decided I would name my YouTube channel and this podcast Comic Hero Talk, and it's self-explanatory. Comic heroes, any hero that has come from a comic book, and I'm going to talk about most mediums that portray those characters, i.e. movies, television shows, and comic books, and also animated films, straight to DVD animated films. I'm going to review as much stuff as I can because I watch a lot of comic book cartoons, comic book cartoon movies, every single comic book movie that comes out. I watch a lot of comic book TV shows. Now, I don't watch every TV show, so when I do watch Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl, so when those shows all pick up again on their next seasons, I'll be reviewing those. I do not watch Gotham or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I watch the Netflix Marvel shows. They're fantastic. Daredevil Season 1, 2, and Jessica Jones, and then I'm really looking forward to Luke Cage later this year. So anyways, yeah, that's going to be basically a lot of the stuff that I'm going to cover. I'm also going to review actual comic books. I just started reading comic books recently. I'm really into the new DC Rebirth line, and I'm really into the Marvel Civil War 2. So I'll be also reviewing those, and obviously the comic book movies as well. So that's just to give you an idea of what you can expect from this Comic Hero Talk YouTube channel. So if you're into all that stuff, you should subscribe, because I'm going to be putting out a lot of videos about all that stuff. Now, how is the format of this Comic Hero Talk official podcast going to be? I titled it official because it's going to be the actual podcast that's released. All the other videos I release are going to be reviews and editorials. This is the official podcast, and I'm going to try to do it weekly. You know, it's hard when I go to work, I go to school as well. Right now is the summertime, so I have a lot more time. For now, I'm going to put it out weekly, but maybe when school starts, it'll be bi-weekly. We'll see how that goes. I'm still figuring it all out. Also, sorry for the very plain background. I went and got a Suicide Squad poster for this. I realized I probably should have got 2 posters. Sorry for the blank wall, but I'm gonna have a more, a more fitting background, a more entertaining background per se, as time goes on. But for now, hopefully you can cope with it with me. Let me explain how the format of this Comic Hero Talk official podcast is going to go. So I'm gonna always start it off introduction, and then I'm gonna go into the comic book movie news. So superhero movie news, anything that has to do with, Marvel, DC, even other stuff that's not Marvel, DC, but is superhero-ish, like maybe some Power Ranger news and stuff. We'll be talking a lot about Power Rangers on here because just like X-Men and Spider-Man, I grew up on Power Rangers almost probably more than those two. So I will be talking about Power Rangers comics and the movies. I do not watch the new TV shows. Those are horrible. Ever since the Mighty Morphin ended, I stopped watching the TV show, but I'm in love with the concept and the idea of it, and I'm super excited for the movie next year. So yeah, we'll be talking DC, Marvel, and a lot of Power Ranger stuff. So that the movie news will be first. Then I'll get into the TV news. So anything that has to do with the CW, DC shows, or the Marvel Netflix shows, any castings or any relevant information that comes out regarding those TV shows, I'll be reviewing those news topics as well. And then finally, I'm going to end it with This Week in Comics, a segment where I go through all the comics that I read in that particular week. And I'm not going to read every single comic that comes out that week, but I'm gonna read a lot of the DC Rebirth lines and a lot of the newer Marvel, top comics that are coming out, like all the Civil War II stuff, the Spider-Man Civil War II storyline, and just for example. So with that being said, let's jump right into the regular programming. The intros are not usually going to be that long. I just wanted to get out of the way some of the stuff, like the background and the format of this podcast. So let's jump right into comic book movie news. So most of you might have heard this, but it's the biggest story going around in this past week, and that is that Brie Larson is in talks to play Captain Marvel for Marvel Studios. And I talked about this on Apocalypse Movies, our movie news podcast. You can go check that out. But if you listen to that, which you probably haven't, we're not that big, you will know that I am so excited with the idea of Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel. And no BS, you can ask my buddies that I podcast with. You can go listen to some of our older podcasts. 2, 3, 4 months ago, I don't remember exactly when, but I said Brie Larson is my number one choice. And I speculated that when she got cast in Kong Skull Island, that she posted pictures of herself working out, and I was like, watch, Marvel's going to take notice and look at her for Captain Marvel. Another reason why I think they would want her is because she's so young. She's 25, and I think she's 26 actually. She can play this character for 15 years if they wanted her to, and I think they're looking for younger cast members to take over the Marvel Cinematic Universe once Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., once they eventually all move on, they're going to need younger actors to carry on this universe, and I think Tom Holland as Spider-Man is going to obviously be a huge part of that. And Brie Larson would be a great addition to go along with that as a young actress that can fit in and carry on into this universe. And I think she's the absolute perfect choice to play Captain Marvel. I recently just picked up the current Captain Marvel run 1 through 5. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it, and I'll put those reviews up. But I'm so interested in the Captain Marvel character right now because Marvel doesn't have their Wonder Woman. Marvel doesn't have that type of a character as far as a strong, so popular and leader type woman character. I know Black Widow has become really popular in the movies, but as far as comic books go and comic book characters, they haven't had that type of Wonder Woman character, and I think they're on their way to making Captain Marvel very relevant in the comics, and then I think that's going to translate into the movies as well. I think she's a captain just like Captain America, a military captain. I believe she's in the Air Force in the comics, and she can become the leader of the Avengers eventually, I think. And I think Brie Larson will be a perfect fit to play that. She just won an Oscar. She has the chops to do it. She has the look to do it, and she's the perfect age. One more bit of information regarding Captain Marvel. There's some contending actors or directors are being thrown around right now, and the two names that are going around are Jennifer Kent, who directed The Babadook, and Nikki Caro, who directed McFarlane USA. I have not seen McFarlane USA, so I cannot comment on Nikki Caro directing, but I have seen The Babadook, and I absolutely love that movie. I think it's a fantastic horror film in an era where horror movies are not that great lately. Jennifer Kent directed such a fantastic film in The Babadook, and the thing that drives that movie is the performance of the main character. And I would be very happy if Jennifer Kent got the job of directing Captain Marvel with Brie Larson starring, because this duo could do some fantastic things with this property, and I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully Brie Larson gets cast in the role, and hopefully Jennifer Kent or another great director, doesn't have to be a woman, any great director is attached to Captain Marvel. Alright, well, moving on to the next big topic from this past week regarding comic book movie news. A lot of you might know that the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition R-rated Blu-ray trailer came out recently, earlier this week, and I just want to give my quick thoughts on that. I did reference it on Apocalypse Movie News as well, but I was a little skeptical going into this. I'm skeptical on the whole idea of them releasing an R-rated version of this movie. I don't think it's necessary. And I gotta say, first of all, that I actually like Batman v Superman. I know it got mostly negative but mixed reviews, and a lot of fans disliked it, a lot of critics disliked it, but I'm one of the fans who really enjoyed it but understand where the disappointments are. And I gotta say, it was disappointing. It was my #1 most anticipated movie of 2016 period, not just superhero, and it's Batman and Superman, and it did not live up to the title Batman v Superman, but it was a very enjoyable movie, and I really liked it. So going into this, I kind of thought the Ultimate Edition R-rated Blu-ray was unnecessary. But I gotta say, after watching this trailer, I'm totally in. I'm totally buying this when it comes out. It looks like a better movie than what we got, and we see like 3 new characters, including Jenna Malone's character, who was cut out of the movie. So we see at least 3 new characters that we did not see in the film, and it looks like there's a lot more context and a lot more stuff going on with Superman and what his motivations were and what was going on with his character. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's not going to change the perception of Batman v Superman. I think a lot of people need to settle down with thinking that, because whatever the theatrical version was, the canon version was the real history. That's the real story that we got that's going to count as real history in this DC universe. But just for us fans who want to watch a different version of Batman v Superman, maybe even a better version of it, I think this is going to be really, really exciting. But it's not going to change anything, really. Just give us fans who love the movie something to look forward to and something to watch. Alright, one more movie topic regarding comic book movie news, sticking on the DC side. So most of you may know that The Flash lost its director a few weeks ago, and they found a new director earlier this week, and that is Rick Famuyiwa. I know I'm totally butchering the name, but if you don't recognize the name, you might recognize the name of the movie Dope. This movie came out last year, and I absolutely adored this movie. It's a fantastic film, one of the most underrated films of last year. Even though it was really highly rated, I just mean among word of mouth and casual movie fans knowing what it is, I feel like it's underrated. And Dope, I love the tone of it. It's a really good movie. It has a lot of heart and it's like a coming of age story. It was a really fantastic film. So I'm over the moon of this guy directing The Flash, and I think The Flash is going to be a more comedic DC movie, I'm guessing. I don't know, but I'm guessing. And Dope definitely has that comedic tone. So I think this director would be a great fit to take this on. And also, we know that Phil Lord and Chris Miller, director of the Lego Movie and the 21 Jump Street franchise, wrote an initial script for this. And then the director who left, Seth Grahame-Smith, altered that script and wrote his own version of it. So he has a few script of those 2 writings, and working with, I don't know Seth Grahame-Smith's tone, but working with the Phil Lord, Chris Miller tone of The Flash with this director sounds amazing. So I hope good things for The Flash. I'm a little iffy on it because I'm such a big fan of the TV show, but I think the Flash is necessary for making the Justice League in a whole DC universe. So I'm really looking forward to it, especially with Rick Famuyiwa directing it. All right, well, now that we're done with talking about the big stories in the comic book movie news, let's move on to comic book TV news. So this is something that came out 3 weeks or a month ago. Most of you who watch the CW DC universe probably know that the Flash appeared on Supergirl last season, and that was probably one of my favorite episodes of Supergirl. And now Supergirl has officially moved to the CW. It was on CBS, it moved to the CW, and I'm actually happy about that because I was afraid that CBS was going to cancel Supergirl. And while I'll acknowledge Supergirl is not a great show, I wouldn't even say it's really good. I wouldn't even it's almost a good show, but I kept watching it because there are certain elements of Supergirl that I really like. Melissa Benoist is phenomenal as Supergirl. I would hope that if they ever did cancel Supergirl, that they could keep her and have her in the CW universe. But they moved the whole show over there, so I'm really excited. And I just love the relationship with her sister, the relationship with Martian the Manhunter, her relationship with her two best friends. And there's a lot of elements of the show that I really liked, and I think they can carry over into next season into making it great. So I'm very happy that when the shows pick up again, our lineup's going to be Supergirl on Monday, The Flash on Tuesday, Arrow on Wednesday, and Legends of Tomorrow, which isn't great either, but just like Supergirl, there's elements of it that I love. So this whole universe has got me really excited, and I just wanted to talk about Supergirl coming to CW because I really like a lot of things in Supergirl, and I'm glad that these universes are going to cross over more. And with that being mentioned, there's also came out and said that there's going to be the 4 shows are going to cross over in the mid-season event, kind of like they did the last two seasons with Arrow and Flash, but all 4 shows are going to cross over. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the way Legends of Tomorrow ended, I'm curious to what that's going to be. I think I have some ideas, but yeah, I'll be reviewing all 4 shows when they come back on, as long as I still enjoy them and they're still running. So sticking to Supergirl though, moving on to my next official topic in comic book TV news, it came out recently. Superman will actually appear in Supergirl Season 2. Now, those of you who watch Supergirl know that Superman has technically appeared on the show, but they never show his face, and he appeared in a younger version of himself in the show as well. So whenever Superman would show up, they would kind of, the way the camera angle was, you would never see his face. And I felt like that's how they were going to keep it. But according to WB themselves, he is going to appear on the show next season. And this is a quote directly from WB. The iconic character of Superman will first be seen visiting his cousin Kara in National City at the beginning of the series' 2nd season. End quote. I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's going to be cool. And it's not going to be Henry Cavill from the movie universe. I can guarantee that. But it's just, it kind of more so solidifies them never crossing over the TV and the movie universes. But with a character like the Flash in multiple universes, anything is possible. There's no word on who's going to play it yet, but just adding on to the previous quotes, producer of Supergirl, Andrew Kreisberg, added this: Greg, Ali, and I, the producers, are beyond thrilled to welcome Clark Kent and his slightly more famous alter ego to the world of Supergirl. Superman will appear in the first 2 episodes of the new season, and we cannot wait to see who next dons the red cape. End quote. So this is pretty cool. I'll be excited. I'm going to watch the show anyway, so I'll be excited to see who they cast, and I'm curious as to what that means. Superman officially being in the universe. That means Superman can show up on Arrow. Superman can show up on Flash, technically, or when Flash goes to Supergirl's world again, hopefully. However they're going to cross over, they can cross paths with Superman. So, and I know for a while WB said both Superman and Batman were off limits on TV, but now they changed that. They're having Superman officially in the universe. So the only character who's not going to be is Batman, and I understand if they don't ever bring Batman in because he's the most popular superhero of all time, I would say so. So that's going to do it for comic book TV news. Now let's move on to my segment called This Week in Comics, and this is where I talk about all the comics that I actually read this week. And I'm really excited about this segment because I just recently started reading comics. One of the main reasons that I started this YouTube channel is to talk about actual comics. So here's the comics that I'm going to talk about that I read in this past week. I'm going to be releasing this podcast usually on Tuesdays because Tuesdays or Wednesdays, because I want to comic books, the new issues of comic books come out on Wednesdays, and I want to have a week, because I'm going to be reading anywhere between 5 to 10 comics each week, and I want to have time to read those. So they come out on Wednesday, so I'll put them out I'll put this podcast out the following Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I'll pick up the next issues that Wednesday and then review them for the next podcast. So this week I'm going to talk about DC Rebirth, DC Universe Rebirth, Steve Rogers Captain America #1, Civil War 2, Batman Rebirth #1, Green Lanterns Rebirth #1, Green Arrow Rebirth #1, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1. So let's go back to the top of the list. The first two comics I'm going to talk about came out a couple weeks ago. They didn't come out this week, but I wanted to shed some light on them really quickly. So here is my issue of the DC Rebirth that I didn't pick it up. My buddy Gio got it for me, but there's my issue. I think it's a different cover. I don't know if it's the regular cover or a variant cover because he had a different one, but this is the one I have. And you can kind of thank this comic right here for me buying, or I can thank, you don't have to thank it. I should thank it for making me really, really interested in reading comic books. I always wanted to, but you know, I just don't. A lot of us don't have time. But I'm a slave to these comic books now. I'm gonna be picking up a lot, and thanks to Rebirth, just Rebirth overall. There is an official spoilers talk review up. It was my first video I uploaded on Comic Hero Talk, so you can go check that out in the comic book reviews playlist. But just really quick, no spoilers. And by the way, yeah, that's something I need to mention. When I talk about comics on this Comic Hero podcast, I'm not going to mention any spoilers. Those will go in my official reviews of the individual comics. But for this podcast, there will be no spoilers. And just really quickly, I really enjoyed DC Rebirth. I love who's narrating it. And I love how it's a personal story, yet large in scope and covers most of the DC universe. And I feel like if you're a new reader, it's a good place to start. Although you probably will be confused at first. But pick and choose from this comic. You can pick and choose what characters you want to keep reading on, and then you'll find out more stuff going forward. And I think that's the best thing it does. It introduces a lot of new elements to new readers, and it lets you decide which characters you're interested in afterwards, and I really like it. And a lot of you know the big reveal at the end, which is really crazy. You can go to my official spoilers talk review of that to go hear mine and Gio Ramos' thoughts on that. Alright, moving on to the next one. This is another one that I had to pick up due to the big thing that has to do with it. I'm not going to say it because no spoilers, but something huge happened in Steve Rogers Captain America #1. You can see that right here. I had to pick it up. It was the talk of the comic book world a couple weeks ago, and I got to say, I really enjoyed the issue. I didn't love it per se, but it was really cool to see. You get to see Steve Rogers as a child, which is something I've never seen before since I'm a new comic book reader. They never really touch on his childhood. And even in the movie, in the first Avenger, you meet him as like a young man. You never really see him as a child, and you get to meet his parents in this. And it's really cool. It's very informative if you don't know much about Captain America. And also, it focuses a lot on the love story with him and Sharon Carter. Though she's the character who's in the movies and is his current love interest right now. And you get to see, they're officially together in this comic book issue. So you get to see that. You get to see him work with some new sidekicks and stuff. But yeah, if you're interested, if you love Captain America, you love him in the movies, I would definitely pick it up. All right, now moving on to issues that actually came out earlier this past Wednesday. And this is the big one. This is probably my favorite issue of the whole entire week, is Civil War 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, Marvel has a Civil War 2 out, and it's pitting Captain Marvel and Iron Man against each other. And so exciting for me because I'm really getting into Captain Marvel, and I absolutely love this issue. There's a shot in the beginning of it, I think it's in the first couple pages, and it has like a lot of heroes in it. I mean, a lot. And for what's going on, it makes sense. It's not just shoved in there for no reason. The thing that I took away from this, you have to make a Civil War storyline in the Marvel Universe. The conflict has to be relevant, and it has to be intriguing, and it has to be believable in a way. The way they set up this conflict between Iron Man and Captain Marvel is fantastic. It's what drew me in. As soon as I figured out what the conflict was, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm totally in, and I had to keep reading it. And it's just really cool to see all these characters interact. It's really cool to see X-Men characters in there, because as movie fans, we don't get to see the X-Men interact with the other Marvel characters. So it's cool to see those characters in there. And it's just overall, man, it's so compelling, and it's very dark as well. So be prepared for some crazy stuff if you're going to pick that up. All right, moving on to some of the Rebirth issues that came out for DC. I didn't read all of them. Well, 4 came out this past week, and it was Batman Rebirth, Green Arrow, Green Lanterns, and Superman. The only one I haven't picked up yet is Superman Rebirth #1. I'm going to pick it up. I bought a lot lately, and I just didn't have time. So I read 3 though, so I'm gonna review those 3 really quickly. Batman Rebirth #1. You can see it right here. This is one that I really liked, but I didn't love. It's a good starting point. The villain is a little weird. I did not care for the villain or what his powers are, but just Batman and a new character that I don't know yet that they introduced to me, and that relationship, I'm really curious to see where that goes, so I'm definitely going to keep reading it. One that I just read last night is Green Arrow Rebirth #1. I really liked this. I really liked it. I didn't know anything about Green Arrow until I started watching the TV show. So, and that I'm a huge fan of Green Arrow now that I've watched the TV show for 4 seasons, and I've never read a comic of his until now. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. You get to see a lot of interactions with him and Black Canary, and it's an intriguing storyline. It's cool to see Oliver Queen in a different setting than we see him in the TV show. And if you're a fan of the Arrow TV show, I definitely recommend picking that issue up. It's really fun and really cool, different relationship between him and Dinah Laurel Lance, I should say. All right, well, moving on to another Green DC hero, heroes, I should say, is Green Lanterns #1. So I didn't know much about this. It's actually not about Hal Jordan or any of the Green Lanterns that comic book readers have come to know. It's about 2 newer characters, Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. And at first I was a little thrown off because I picked up this issue thinking that we would get more Hal Jordan or more John Stewart or more Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, those characters. But it's mainly about these 2 characters. And one thing that I'm really excited about this comic for is the fact that one of the main characters is a woman Green Lantern, which I think is so cool, and I think it's something that they can incorporate into the movies later on down the line. And also the fact that she's a Hispanic woman. Her name is Jessica Cruz. So you have, comic books in general and movies, TV shows, you want to keep the diversity going, and adding a woman Green Lantern who's also Hispanic is a great thing. That gets me really excited. And also, I think Simon Baz is African American. The coloring in the comic is kind of weird, but just it's really awesome to see diversity really moving forward in comics. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And also, these 2 characters are going to be heavy hitters. I don't think this is a spoiler because on the DC Rebirth cover, it shows them 2. So they're going to be, let's just say they're going to be incorporated in working with members of the Justice League somehow, some way. So that's something that I'm really excited about to see. All right, now moving on to the last comic I'm going to talk about today, which might throw some people off, but you heard me talk about Power Rangers earlier. One movie I can remember furthest back to when I was a kid is going with my mom to watch the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in theaters. And I grew up on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV show. I had all the toys. I had the toys, all the weapons, the toy weapons that they had. I had everything. And I loved Power Rangers. And for someone like me, I stopped watching it after Mighty Morphin because the shows got too out of hand and too stupid. So I haven't been able to enjoy any type of entity of Power Rangers lately at all. and I'm excited for the movie, but I'm itching to watch the movie, and I find out there's comic books, a current run of Power Ranger comics, and from what I heard, I talked to the guy at the comic book store, they're really taken seriously. It's not campy or stupid like the TV show was. And I haven't read the official Power Rangers run yet. I picked them up. It's only 3 issues so far. I'm going to read those and put those reviews up, but I wanted to review this one because it just released this week, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1, and it's all about Kimberly. It's all about the Pink Ranger, and I got to show you guys this really cool variant cover that I got. The comic book store that I went to, Ken's Comics, shout out. He only had one of these, and he said you had to order a certain amount of the regular issues to get this, and I had to buy it. That's so awesome if you could see it. It has Kimberly with her bow, and I said Civil War II is my favorite comic this week. That's my second favorite because I think the mythology of the Power Rangers is so cool, and you could make it realistic within a sci-fi fantasy world and make it down more grounded and make it more serious, and that's exactly what this comic did. It puts Kimberly in a new situation by herself, and it makes sense why she's by herself. It's not forced in my opinion, and it's really a cool read if you're a Power Rangers fan. If you're not a Power Rangers fan, I probably wouldn't recommend picking it up because you're not going to care. But if you are a Power Rangers fan, I definitely recommend picking up Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1. Alright, well, that's going to do it for Comic Hero Talk official podcast #1. Thank you so much for those of you who watched. They're usually not going to be this long, but I had a longer intro than I'm ever going to have, and it makes sense for the first podcast. But I'm Jacob Bartley. Thank you all for listening. You can find me on Twitter at JacobBartley_, on Instagram at JacobBrianBartley. And you can find me on the YouTube channel Apocalypse Movies, where we talk about all movies, not just superheroes. We talk about everything, most major releases that come out. We do a movie news podcast, a Star Wars podcast called the Padawan Podcast. We do a Rumor Central podcast that's all about movie rumors. So yeah, go check Apocalypse Movies out. And if you enjoyed this video podcast, please subscribe to Comic Hero Talk, the YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. I just started this YouTube channel. I'm trying to get it off the ground because I want to keep reviewing comic book movies, comic book TV shows, and actual comics. So if you got any enjoyment from this podcast, please subscribe and hit that like button. Please share and hit that comment section too. Let me know what you thought of any of the topics that I talk about. What do you think of Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel potentially? What do you think of Superman being in Supergirl? What do you think of all these topics? What do you think of the comics that I read? If you have any questions about the comics, shoot me down in the comment section. Let me know, and I'll get back to you for sure. Well, thank you all for listening. Until next time, you all take care.